What really gets my dick hard is
so fucking what?
Welcome to Metal Up Your Podcast. I'm Ethan Luck.
And I'm Clint Wells.
And this is Revisited number 6. And unfortunately, here we are remembering the late, the great, one of the best songwriters of all time, Mr. Tom Petty.
Man, as if that day started for many of us, waking up to the news of what had happened in Vegas.
Yeah.
And
already hard enough.
And I work in country music, so most of the people there are people I work with and know. And
yeah.
So it was this sort of nightmare scenario of getting texts of people thinking I might have been there, sending out texts trying to figure out who was there and if they were hurt. And the day just kept unfolding, and you found out more and more people had died. And
I mean, aside from it being specifically a country music festival, that kind of stuff, when that happened, when the Bataclan happened in Paris, that kind of stuff hits home for people like me and Clint, because that's what we do for a living. Literally the morning I found out, I was at Red Rocks in Colorado, and it's there's no buildings around that, obviously, but it's a big open air venue. That kind of stuff weighs heavy on guys that tour. It's stuff, you're out in the open doing these shows, and when something like this happens, it's so tragic, and it's like, man, it just makes you think, like, God, I do that for a living. That's like I had friends that were there. I had a friend that was in the hotel when that happened.
Right. The hotel kind of went on lockdown.
Oh yeah, my buddy was stuck up on the top floor for about 14 hours or something. And I had another old high school friend that was in the crowd, and one of her friends was unfortunately killed running away. Wow. I mean, it was just a heavy, heavy day already. And then, literally, like, I want to say 4 hours later, like, we're at the venue setting up, and one of our other techs was like, dude, like, Tom Petty's in the hospital, he had cardiac arrest, and they found him unconscious. And I was just like, gosh, as if this day couldn't get any heavier,
Well, I know one of my initial sort of shocked tweets was like, please God, no, not Tom Petty. We need you more. We need you more than ever. Like,
which is so true.
His music has been such a healing part of my life that on a day like that was like, oh no, we're going to lose Tom too. Like, the world just felt really, I don't know if you felt this experience of this, but the world that day to me felt like colorless and kind of gray and tasteless. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I mean, I literally know what you're saying, because that day was a miserable day as a touring, person. It was unseasonably cold that day. It was like 38 degrees all day long. It was gray. It was raining. It started snowing at one point. It was just a gloomy day all around. So that day basically fit everyone's mood, and definitely didn't help how you were feeling,
Well, and the news was kind of so fucked up too, because you're dealing with the Vegas stuff, and that all that news is changing. And then with Tom, it was like, oh, he's alive, but he's on life support. And it was like, well, what does that mean?
You're right.
Is that good or bad? And then you hear, oh, they're going to pull life support. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Like, why? And then you hear did you see that, like, his daughter got upset at Rolling Stone because Rolling Stone sort of prematurely reported that he had passed away when he was in fact still alive? Because I think
it was a tough thing. Like, well, they pulled his life support because, I mean, I think in his in his wishes were, if he was ever to have to be put on life support, that they pull it.
Right.
So, because from what everything I read was that that he was found unconscious. He had full cardiac arrest. By the time they got to the hospital and got him hooked up and stuff, he was basically brain dead. And at that point, that's when his wishes were to be pulled off life support. And I actually had a good talk with our production manager, this guy Steve, who was actually Soundgarden's production manager up until Chris Cornell died. And he's not only, he's told me mind-blowing stories about Chris, over the past few months of touring together and what it was like that night. And it was just heartbreaking stuff. So he shared a story with me about his father. It was pretty much the same. His father passed away the same exact way. And he said, once you pull off life support, even though there's no brain function, it's just a matter of hours that they'll still breathe on their own until their body just slowly shuts down. So Tom Petty's daughter takes to Instagram, just getting pissed off at Rolling Stone and posting all these amazing photos of her and her dad and her daughter, all these great things about her father, amazing. But the news was pretty fucked up regarding Tom Petty's death, because they prematurely reported all this shit. And it was like, yeah, and some people are like, oh, well, he's brain dead, so he's dead. It's like, well, you know what? Put yourself in his daughter's shoes.
Yeah, for sure. That's bullshit.
Total bullshit, man. Wait for an official statement from his management or his family or something, right, man. And guess what? It's none of your fucking business. This is
for sure.
Yeah, Tom is, of course, he's one of the most public figures in the last 40 plus years, but that's still someone's father. That's someone's bandmate. That's someone's whatever.
I think people confuse, and I think maybe even I've been guilty of this in the past, maybe a little bit. But his music belongs to all of us, but he doesn't.
Of course.
So, and I understand as a fan, I understand that line gets kind of fucked up. I mean, I felt personally offended that he passed away. I mean, I was personally offended that Chris Cornell died.
Right.
But he's still his own person, and
for
Rolling Stone to jump the gun on that for whatever reason, maybe it was innocent, maybe they were just trying to be the first to draw traffic. I mean,
every news outlet is nowadays. Nowadays, every news outlet wants to be the first to report something.
Yeah, it's all gross now.
Yeah, totally. So I don't know. I saw one really cool quote on Twitter. I don't know who the person was. I just kind of scrolled past it and someone retweeted it, but it said, Tom Petty didn't wear his heart on his sleeve. He passed it around for all of us to see.
Right.
And I mean, I think that's very true. If you listen to Tom Petty, you know that about his music. I mean, he gave us a glimpse into his soul, into his heart, and I know he's not really related to Metallica in any way, but we can't not do this because Tom Petty, I guarantee James Hetfield is influenced by Tom Petty, Well, and I'll say, if you guys don't know by now, Ethan and I have pretty eclectic music tastes. Right. And
we converge on Metallica. Metallica is one of the most important bands in our lives, but Tom Petty, I mean, I tweeted and Instagrammed about it. I don't want to get too wax too poetic and lame about it, but his music, I believe, has saved my life the same way Metallica has.
Yeah.
Kept me out of a lot of trouble, kept me safe from a lot of bad thoughts and bad feelings, and I think that he's written kind of the American songbook,
Yeah. I was when the other day when during setup at Red Rocks, we were all kind of discussing it throughout the day, and in addition to the Las Vegas tragedy, and at one point I was just thinking to myself, is Tom Petty the greatest American songwriter that ever lived?
Yeah, I mean, possibly.
I would put him in the top 5 for sure.
It'd be like him and Springsteen. And, and Dylan
for sure. You could get into the country world, you could have Johnny Cash or, there's so many people that are great songwriters.
I think Tom Petty smokes Johnny Cash personally.
Yeah.
As a songwriter.
I'm a big Cash fan, but I agree with you.
Me too. Me too. But
there's so many out there, but Tom Petty easily has to be up there with, the best of them. I would put him above Bruce Springsteen personally. I
would too, actually. He might be number 1 for me. I don't think I would count Neil Young because Neil Young's Canadian. So
true, yeah.
Even though he did most of his work in California, but I think I would put Tom Petty above Dylan for me.
Yeah, I would too.
I just never resonated with Dylan's music the way I have with Tom.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's not to say that he's not great at what he does, but I'm with you. Yeah, Tom's music.
I was going to ask you kind of what's your story with coming online with him? And
my story would have been, let's see, I came online with Tom Petty. It would be 1989 when it was the year
Full Moon Fever.
Full Moon Fever, yeah. That was if anyone was around and old enough to remember that when that record came out, it was massive.
Right.
I mean,
well, that's the record for those of you who don't know that has Free Fallin', Running Down a Dream, I Won't Back Down. Some of his biggest hits were on that record.
Some of his biggest hits, for sure. And that technically was his first solo album, even though Mike Campbell played on it, but still, like, but yeah, I remember being pretty young. I mean, I was 11 years old, and I remember being at a friend's house, and this is when my family still lived in Long Beach. It was like right before we moved to Orange County that year, and I remember just hanging out at a friend's house, probably playing Nintendo or something, and dude's older brother had this record playing like all day. I think it had just come out. And I just remember hearing all those songs, you know, Running Down a Dream resonated with me. I liked the guitars in it and all this stuff. And from then it was just like, and then the next record, Into the Great Wide Open, it was like that famous video with Johnny Depp. And it's like he just got bigger and bigger throughout the 90s, even though he already had a monster career in the 80s and late 70s.
And Learning to Fly was on that record too.
Yep. Which I think that was his longest running number one.
Oh, really? Learning to Fly was?
I think so, yeah.
More than Free Fallin'?
I believe so, yeah.
Crazy.
But yeah, that's kind of when I came online and kind of just kept following him. And the thing that I always loved about Tom Petty was, I mean, ever since I got into him, like every record after that and his past catalog, like every record's good.
Oh, there's no bad record for sure.
Tom Petty does not have a Saint Anger, you know?
I mean, if he did, it would probably, I think people would generally agree that The Last DJ was probably, which is, I think, 2002, but that would be a dipping point.
But it's still a good record. There's still
one of my
good material.
We're going to do our top fives here soon, and one of my top fives is a deep cut from that record. So
cool.
All of his records had great shit.
Yeah, they absolutely did.
For me, it was. I remember distinctly the record was Southern Accents, which was 85, and the song "Don't Come Around Here No More." That video on MTV, the kind of Alice in Wonderland video.
Totally. That, yeah. And I do remember seeing that when I was younger, before Full Moon Fever came out, and I remember thinking it was really cool and crazy, but I never like got into it yet. You know, I didn't like ask my dad, like, get me into Tom Petty, you know?
Well, I mean, same deal. I was like 3 or 4, like my parents just putting me in front of TV.
Right.
And that video scared me. There's the scene where they're eating the cake, but the cake is Alice. And
yeah, totally.
But then you're right. Like, I'm real similar to you. Is when I was old enough to really care about music, it would have been Full Moon Fever. And then, Into the Great Wide Open, I liked that Johnny Depp video. But then for me, the big one was Wildflowers, 94.
Oh my gosh. God, that is such an incredible record. And it's interesting, like throughout his career, I mean, it's mainly Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers for most of the albums he's released, but he did 3 technically solo records, but he talks about it in his documentary that, you know, he ends up bringing in some of the Heartbreakers every time. So he I think in the documentary he says something like, so they're essentially Heartbreakers records, but
Wildflowers is everyone but Stan Lynch.
Yeah, and Stan Lynch was, I think, out of the band at that point. So
yeah, the last thing he did was The Last Dance with Mary Jane, that was another big part of my childhood. But
that was a huge song.
But then for me, after Wildflowers, I kind of, it's almost like being from the South, like everyone goes to church, but you don't really, you know what I mean? Like everyone like loves Tom Petty. I never disliked Tom Petty, but it really wasn't until 2007, which isn't that long ago, when he came out with my favorite solo record of his called Highway Companion.
It's so good.
It's just him, Jeff Lynne, and Mike Campbell, and Tom plays all the drums on it.
Yeah, which is cool.
So he came out with that record, which is his 3rd solo record, and it coincided with that documentary Running Down a Dream.
And for those listening that have not seen Running Down a Dream, it's on Netflix right now. It's
required viewing.
4 hours long.
Required viewing.
Yeah. After I've watched it probably 3 times now.
Yeah, same.
And it's probably almost 10 years old, I guess.
2007.
When I watch that documentary, it makes me wish that like every one of my favorite bands had a documentary that long, because you get to cover so much more material in there. And I really would encourage anybody listening to watch that, even if you're not a Tom Petty fan or you've never really checked out his music. Watch that documentary on Netflix, and you'll just get such a good idea of who this man was, like his passion for music, his passion for his fans being able to afford his albums. Like he fought his label for the price of his record and all this cool stuff, man. Yeah. I mean, I watched it and my end thought was like, God, Tom Petty's fucking punk rock, man. That guy just did what he wanted, played by his own rules.
Well, and he's like seems to be the coolest hang in rock and roll. Like, even when you get into the Traveling Wilburys, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the greatest supergroup ever put together.
Ever, yes.
Bob Dylan, Roy Orbison, George Harrison, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Like 5 of the greatest American songwriters ever.
ever. Yeah.
Well, mine is Jeff Lynne, who's British, and George Harrison, who's British.
Who's British.
I guess I just always associate the sound of that record, though, with American music.
Right. Exactly.
But anyway, but you look at all these guys that wanted to work with Tom, and the Heartbreakers supported Bob Dylan as his band on the True Confessions tour. The Heartbreakers supported George Harrison as his band. The Heartbreakers supported Johnny Cash on the Unchained Rick Rubin record. Everyone wanted the Heartbreakers.
Oh yeah. I've got a really good quote from our mutual friend John Davis from Superdrag and Lisa Memory. The day that Tom passed away, he put a picture of him up on Instagram and said, "Pardon my slang, but if Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan, and George Harrison ask you to join their band, you're a bad motherfucker."
Right.
I mean, that's so true. I mean, you're right. Some of the greatest songwriters of our time want to work with Tom Petty, and they did so and did the Traveling Wilburys, which is another great record they did.
There's another great quote from Stevie Nicks, who says that she was such a huge Heartbreakers fan because Tom and Stevie had a big kind of duet hit called Stop Dragging My Heart Around.
Yeah.
And she said that at the height of Fleetwood Mac, if Tom Petty had asked her to join the Heartbreakers, she would have left them and done it.
And I think his response was, "There's no girls in the Heartbreakers."
Yeah, there's no girls in the Heartbreakers. That's so good.
Yeah, so go watch that documentary. All those little tidbits me and Clint just kind of talked about are in there, and it's such a well done documentary, and you just really have a heart for this guy when you watch it.
And what that documentary did for me, so from 2007 to maybe mid 2009, I was just obsessed with Tom Petty. Went back, got all the records, did all the deep cuts, read a bunch of books. There's a really good book called Tom Petty Confessions that coincides with Highway Companion. That's just a great album by album, song by song, just interview with him talking about his life and music. And
that's very cool. I haven't actually read that. I should check that out.
Yeah, I'll let you borrow it. What else can we say? We're going to do our top 5 Tom Petty tunes.
It's just, it's like, the Cornell one. It's just like, it's a bit of a shock, obviously. Cornell was younger and took his own life, so that one hurt, I think, a little more.
It did. But Tom was still young.
Yeah, Tom was 66, I feel like the first couple days it happened because of the Las Vegas stuff, because I was dealing with some family stuff with my grandfather, and I didn't have time to process the whole Tom Petty thing until a few days later.
Right.
I was in the middle of working. I was just kind of like, oh man. So the next day off I just woke up and was getting ready for the day, and I just put on the She's the One soundtrack, which is probably my favorite Tom Petty records.
It's my favorite Heartbreakers record, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I just started listening to it, and then it started to kind of sink in. But one cool thing that happened, the only moment of that first day that we found out he died, and I believe it was still before they officially announced it, but the band Dawes is opening up on this Kings Leon tour, and I was standing side stage because earlier I heard them rehearsing Free Fallin', and I was like, I wonder if they're going to do that tonight. And those dudes walked out on stage in 35-degree weather and opened their whole set with Free Fallin', and the crowd was just like, I'm getting chills right now talking about it, because it was this beautiful moment where there was still uncertainty about him, and you knew he was going to pass, but it was still that shock, and all of a sudden they come out and do this, and the second they did the first 2 chords, the whole crowd was like, oh my God, you can tell they started cheering and singing along. It was such a cool moment.
I wouldn't have been able to make it through it. I'm surprised that dude was able to do it without crying.
Oh, I talked to him the next day, and I just complimented them on their execution of the song, and I didn't talk to their singer, but I talked to their keyboard player, and they're all super sweet dudes, and I was like, man, you guys really did a great job last night. That was so fitting. And I said it kind of helped me start the process of, whoa, Tom Petty's gone, and he was like, man, it was really hard to do. And I guess they did it the next night, or 2 nights later, they did like their own show when we had a day off, and they did it again. They said it was even harder because they did it at the beginning of their encore, so they had like a ton of adrenaline still, and the crowd was amped up, but it was such a cool moment.
Wow. Well, it's just real clear that his music meant a lot to a lot of people. And
yeah, man.
I mean, if you go, a friend of mine, I remember telling me this on the Highway Companion tour, was telling me that he wasn't really a huge Tom Petty fan, and he said he went to the show, and the next day or whatever, when we were working at a guitar store, I was like, how was it? And he's like, dude, I didn't know I knew so many Tom Petty songs. He said it was just two hours, and this guy does not own any Tom Petty records. He just went because someone gave him a ticket. He said he sang almost every word for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's how good a songwriter he was, and that's how many hits he had.
That's powerful. I mean, he's part of the fabric, of music consciousness.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and it's like, and he also has he has that band Mudcrutch that he did before the Heartbreakers, and they went ahead and got the band back together a couple years ago and recorded a new Mudcrutch record where Tom Petty's the bass player.
And it's good.
It's really good. Totally.
He's a great bass player. He played bass on a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he's got Mudcrutch, he's got the Woolberries. His last 2 records are actually really great.
They're
a
really
record called
good.
Mojo and a record called Hypnotic Eye.
Yeah.
That my wife and I were really lucky to see Tom Petty in April, not that long ago this year.
Man,
it was an amazing show. I think I've talked about it on the show, and even he played a couple of new tunes. That it wasn't like a go get a beer moment. It was like they were just as good as anything else in his set, which was, by the way, just filled with fucking hit after hit after hit after hit. And he did which he did Walls, by the way, but he did a whole little Wildflowers block where he did Wildflowers, Good to Be King, Time to Move On.
Good to Be King is great.
Well, and it was cool that he did Time to Move On. Like, I think that was kind of a rare little nugget from that record.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great song. That whole record is awesome. It's
just flawless. There's not a bad song on it.
I would say like Wildflowers and She's the One are probably my top 2.
And you know what? We can tie this into Metallica, because guess who produced both of those records? Rick Rubin. Yep. The guy who did almost nothing for Death Magnetic is responsible for so many great, because Rick Rubin did Wildflowers, She's the One, and Echo, which is a great
Echo is awesome.
97. Great Tom Petty record.
Yeah, man.
So props to Rick Rubin for all that.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are listening are just mostly metal fans or whatever, but you like good songwriting, you have to get into Tom Petty, or at least go, even just throw the greatest hits on to start, just because there's a ton of them.
I mean, are there people who aren't into Tom Petty? Is that a thing?
Yeah. Oh, I've had a couple people like on Facebook, like say like, I've never been into Tom Petty. I've never liked his voice, but rest in peace. I'm like, why would you even put that up? You don't like him. Don't bother putting that shit up there. Like, maybe, okay, I get it. Like, he has a very distinct voice. I dig it. If you don't dig it, that's fine. But you cannot deny the ability of his songwriting skills.
No.
What is he called sometimes? Like the king of the first line or something?
He has a great bunch of those little things. I mean, he's the one kind of credited for the "Don't bore us, get to the chorus" vibe.
He does a fantastic job of that. He never ever bores you. Like,
I mean, in Nashville writing circles, I mean, we've been doing this for years. This isn't just because he passed away, but the whole "what would Tom Petty do" thought experiment when you're stuck on a tune is just happens in every writing room every day in this fucking town.
It totally does. Yeah.
I mean, I think I've described him as a Beatle, which is just in my own language of music, the highest compliment I can give someone. Yeah. Because the Beatles are like inhuman gods, but he was like Beatle level songwriter, and it seems so effortless.
Yeah, he was our John Lennon, he was our American John Lennon. Yeah, I mean, you can't. Yeah, it's a tough thing to process still. Like, I've been listening to a lot of Tom Petty this week, and even last night I was just at the Hollywood Bowl where he played his last show on the 40th anniversary tour. And I had a friend that got to go to that show. I was just like, man. And I unfortunately never got to see Tom Petty live, which bums me out. Oh,
man. Yeah.
When he was in Nashville and the show you went to, I was out of town. And yeah, just, and that's, that's fine. That happens and it's going to happen. But, I would have loved to have seen him live.
He was pretty funny. Before he played You Got Lucky, which is one of my favorites, he was playing a 12-string guitar. He kind of did You Got Lucky kind of like acoustically with a 12-string. Yeah. And he's like, we're in Nashville. He's like, I reckon everyone out there is a songwriter. And if you're not a songwriter, you're probably a guitar player. He's like, let me tell you guitar players out there. I'll tell you a little bit about this guitar I'm holding here. This is a 12-string guitar, which means that there's 12 strings on it instead of 6. And then he started playing You Got Lucky. It was really funny and charming. He seemed really grateful for the fans. He had I saw a lot of moments on the deck where he was just sort of taking it all in. And then when it got to the band introductions, he was so sweet and complimentary and seemed so grateful for his band.
I mean, those dudes, I mean, have backed him up for 40 years, you know, most of them.
Yeah.
I mean, those dudes are his best friends, you know. I couldn't even imagine what those guys were going through that day that they found out he was rushed to the hospital, you know. And
right.
But yeah, I mean, that dude, I mean, your 40th year tour, of course you're going to sit back on stage and just soak it in. Like, I can't believe I'm still doing this, and these many people are still showing up.
I told Isabel at some point, because it was sold out. It was like 23,000 people at Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville. And I said, he's been selling out stadiums like this for about 30 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Like almost his entire career, wherever he goes, every year, he sells out rooms this big, if not bigger.
Oh, yeah. Very, very true. Very true. Man, I mean, what a career the dude had.
Yeah.
What do you say? Do you want to go through our top 5 Petty songs?
Yeah, let's do our top 5s. We'll start with you, and let's do 5 to 1.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we're going to encourage all of you out there. Now, so let's say you listen to our show because you're a big metal guy or a big Metallica guy, and maybe you say fuck Tom Petty. Maybe you say I don't really know anything other than Free Fallin'. I would encourage you to maybe make a Spotify. In fact, don't even fucking do that. Go to iTunes and invest $5 or $10 unless there's overlap. Yeah. And just buy these 10 songs that Ethan and I are talking about, and just check it out.
Yeah, just give it a chance, you know.
Just give it a shot.
Yeah. All right. My number 5 is the album and song where I came online, Running Down a Dream from Full Moon Fever.
Very cool.
That one, I think because it was, this was before I started playing guitar as a kid. I started playing guitar later that year, but my dad played, and I loved that he played, and it always fascinated me. And I think that
it's a great riff for you riff lovers out there. It's a really great riff.
It is.
The quote from Jeff Lynne, who produced Full Moon Fever, the quote was, when Mike Campbell showed him that riff, Jeff Lynne said, you know, every riff has been written and like already thought of and created, and you just came up with the last one.
That's awesome.
Because it's on the E string, ga 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 ga. Yeah. He's like, I thought everyone had already written all those, but you just wrote the last one. I thought that was pretty cool.
Totally. And I love in the chorus, like, running down a dream, that acoustic. Yep. It's just like that little overdub of acoustic there. It's so cool. My number 4 is one of your favorites, You Got Lucky, off of Long After Dark.
Hell yeah.
Such a good song.
Great song. And a really cool, weird video, too.
Yeah, that's right. I haven't watched that video in a while.
It's like a long form video where there's like a story and there's like a big intro.
Yeah,
It's kind of like Into the Great Wide Open. There's a big story.
Yeah, totally. But what a cool, like, I love the keys at the very beginning. They're so creepy and eerie and
kind of 80s sounding, but
very. But that guitar part that comes in, it's like
it's so good.
Down, 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 down. Oh,
it's
man.
It's just like classic Petty.
I know, it totally is. All right, my number 3, I actually have a story, a very recent, within 12-hour story to go along with this. My number 3 is the song Southern Accents off of the said album, Southern Accents. Beautiful song. So last night, Kings Leon did the Hollywood Bowl, like I mentioned before, and it was only 2 weeks ago that Tom Petty played what would be his last show ever, but last show of the 40th anniversary tour there. And so last night, before the band went into one of their songs called Back Down South, they did the first 2 verses of Southern Accents. And it was a last-minute thing. They kind of just rehearsed it real quick, and it was like this cool moment. And Caleb said some really good stuff about that record because that's when he came online with Tom Petty. That was the first record he bought. And so he had some really cool things about, you know, and and you can look up stuff in the past. Kings have often said Tom Petty is a big influence on them, and that's what kind of helped Caleb shape his songwriting. So he said that.
I think, that's cool.
Yeah, it was just a cool moment.
Any American rock band is going to be touched by the Heartbreakers.
Oh yeah,
especially if you're our age, it's just impossible to escape that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure our friends over at Single Podcast Theory will talk about Tom Petty because it's Eddie Vedder's favorite artist.
Oh, for sure. And you know? Eddie Vedder sang The Waiting with Tom, and
yeah, totally.
That's cool that Kings did a little tribute. It's funny that they chose that because what's the album called that they had that you said, Back Down South?
Well, the song's called Back Down South.
Well, you know, Tom Petty has a song called on the Highway Companion called Down South. The lyric is headed back down south. It's like that exact thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, there you go. There's Caleb's influence, you know.
Very cool.
All right, so number 2, Wildflowers off of the album Wildflowers.
Very cool.
I think that song Wildflowers is a perfect song.
Did you know that that's Lindsey Buckingham singing BGVs on that?
Oh, is it really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean,
Very
Wildflowers
cool.
is one of his greatest songs.
Absolutely.
Just a real simple acoustic arrangement, acoustic and a piano.
Yeah, man. It's so pretty. And I actually a couple years ago played that song at a friend's wedding because the girl he married, that was her favorite song. And I was super scared to do it because I'm not Tom Petty, you know.
I have a much less sweet story about that. When I did see them in April, I was drinking beer during the show and I had to go pee. Like I held it as long as I could. While I'm peeing, I hear him start to play Wildflowers.
Oh, and zip it up.
I could have just torn my penis off my torso to get back to my seat to hear that song.
Yeah, man.
Which is pretty similar to playing it at a wedding.
Oh yeah, it's very, very similar. I had to pee really bad too, so I get it.
All right. I get it.
My number one, hands down, favorite Tom Petty song is from the She's the One soundtrack, Walls.
All right, I hear
and
that.
You're going to hear that at the very end of this episode in its entirety. So that even if you don't go check out any of these songs, you're at least going to get to hear a full Tom Petty song at the end of this episode. So, yeah, recapping: number 5, Running Down a Dream; number 4, You Got Lucky; number 3, Southern Accents; number 2, Wildflowers; and number 1, Walls.
All right, very cool.
Let's hear yours.
We do have one overlap, I'm happy to say, but
I figured,
only one.
yeah.
So number 5,
I could guess it, but go ahead.
I know because we've privately kind of talked about it. So my wife even told me last night she guessed what it would be.
Yeah.
So my number 5, I wanted to do a tie so bad, and I think because it's our show, I'll just let it be a tie. Tie between "Listen to Her Heart," which is an early track. It was a single off the second record. You're Gonna Get It.
Yeah.
She's gonna listen to her heart. It's a great song. I have that number 5 sharing the slot with a deep cut from The Last DJ. I mentioned it a little earlier. It's called "Have Love Will Travel." You familiar with that tune?
Not really. And that's a record I need to dive back into.
Travel with you everywhere, baby.
Okay.
May my love travel with you always. It's just super buried on that record. I think they did do it on SNL, whatever year cycle 2002 they were doing that. It's this really beautiful song called "Have Love Will Travel." That's my number 5.
Yeah.
Number 4. It's tempting when you make these lists to try to make them cool, like deep cut shit. But mine is similar to your list. Like they're mostly hits. But
yeah, but that's 4, Tom Petty.
I had to go with "Don't Come Around Here No More."
Dude, yeah.
Because the video, of course, is just indelibly printed on my young mind because it was so cool and weird. But the song itself, so he co-wrote that with Dave Stewart, and it sounds, Dave Stewart's from the Eurythmics.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just sounds so different than anything they ever had done or have done since.
Right, yeah.
And that drum loop thing is just sort of, to me, it's as classic as Come Together. Like,
yeah, the cool sitar stuff on it.
The sitar.
Yeah, the sitar is almost like the first hook on it too.
Oh my god!
When you first hear that sitar, you know right away what the song is.
And then I love the way it kind of opens up and goes to double time at the end.
Yeah,
I love all
totally.
the BGVs on it, and it's such a strange, cool song.
It is.
Because and I wanted to tell this story too. So, as a songwriter in town, one of the things you're trying to do, if you can, is get a publishing deal where you're a part of a pub house. They help pitch your songs, get you co-writes, and they pay you a little salary to write. Everyone in town tries to get one, blah, blah, blah. And when I was really green in town, my first publishing meeting was with a dude. I was really nervous. And in a publishing meeting, you go into a pub room and you either play your songs on a guitar or you have a CD and you basically play someone your songs and try to get a deal. It's almost like getting a record deal.
Right.
And I remember going in this real puffy, stuffy room with this fucking suit and tie type cat. And this is maybe in 2011. And before we even heard a note of my music, he's like, "Let me ask you a question, man. Do you write commercial music or cool music?" And I will never forget, like, my answer to that was just Tom Petty. I was like, because Tom Petty had one of his great talents is writing obviously super commercial, big hits. But if you really get inside these songs, they're really strange.
Yeah, for sure.
And Don't Come Around Here No More is a great example of that.
Oh yeah, that's a very strange song.
Like, why does it have to be either or? Like, Tom Petty paved the way to do both,
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my number 4. My number 3 from the She's the One soundtrack, Angel Dream.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I dreamed you, I saw your face, Beautiful little ballad, and there's a couple of
Yeah.
versions of it on the soundtrack. For those of you who don't know, the She's the One soundtrack is another Rick Rubin produced Heartbreakers record, kind of forgotten in the world somehow.
I think so too. Yeah, I think the song Walls kind of sheds a little light on it because that's such a big song of his,
But no one ever talks about that record,
Yeah, I know.
It's got some great rockers on it.
Yeah, for sure.
My number 2 is track 1 from Echo called Room at the Top.
Ooh, that's
I got a room at the top of the world tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Such a great song with a really great, crazy Mike Campbell solo. By
Yeah.
the way, Mike Campbell's in my top 5 guitar players of all time. I mean, he's up there with David Gilmour and Neil Young and Keith Richards.
Yeah.
Mike Campbell is and a guitar player I aspire to emulate in all of my work because he is so tasteful and song serving.
Oh yeah,
right?
he never steals the show. He plays what's needed. He plays what complements everything else. And him and Tom have had such a good writing working relationship for so long. It's just like
legendary.
That's almost like a Lennon McCartney kind of vibe.
I was just about to say that exact same thing. Lennon McCartney level, Keith and Mick, that whole deal.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2. Number 1, our one and only overlap, easily my favorite Tom Petty song of all time, Walls,
Oh
from
my
the
gosh,
She's
dude.
the One soundtrack.
It's
And
so
that's
good.
also Lindsey Buckingham doing the BGVs on this one too.
Oh, okay, very cool. Now that you mention that, I can hear it. I mean, Lindsey Buckingham kind of has that tone of voice that does sound, gives it that Heartbreakers kind of sound too, But yeah, that's cool that he did the background vocals on this. This song has some of my favorite lyrics of all time in it. I mean, all
Some
around your
days are
island.
diamonds, some days are rocks.
Yeah, my favorite in this probably in this song is all around your island. There's a barricade, keeps out the danger and holds in the pain.
Yeah.
Shit, man, that's
I know.
good stuff right there.
What does he say? Some days you're happy, some days you cry. Part of me is ocean, part of me is sky. Well, in
Yeah.
the chorus, you got a heart so big it could crush this town, but I can't hold out forever, even walls fall down.
Yeah, come on,
Man, come on, Tom.
come on, and that's
God
like what
damn.
20 years after his career started, he's still writing that good. I mean, most songwriters or guys in bands, frontmen, whatever, aren't that fortunate or talented to when they get in their 50s and 60s to still write good stuff like that.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot of stuff. There's a reason Aerosmith hasn't put out a good record in a long time. You know what I mean? I love Aerosmith. I think they did a lot of cool stuff, but
Yeah,
I think
Get a
what-
Grip might be the last great one.
yeah, totally. But guys like Tom Petty, guys like Elvis Costello, they're still. I would even say like Bob Dylan, in my opinion, doesn't really put out that good of stuff.
No,
you know?
and neither does McCartney, I hate to say.
I think McCartney has put out like one good solo record in the last 15 or so years called Chaos and Creation.
Chaos
in
and
the
Creation,
Backyard.
yeah.
It's a
Which
great
Nigel
record.
Godrich did, the Radiohead
He did,
Beck producer did that. That is a great record.
And I think what else makes that record great is that Paul played everything on it.
Yeah.
He didn't use his band. But yeah, so Tom Petty's one of those rare artists that, get into his 60s, he's still putting out cool shit, and he's still a great songwriter,
Well, you guys just got to check out Mojo and Hypnotic Eye. And I would say Highway Companion. 2006,
Companion, She's the
2010, and
One.
2014. Yeah, She's the One. That's from 96.
Yeah.
You're right.
Just-
I mean, the dude started in the mid 70s and had a vibrant, booming career all through the 80s, and then he was doing
Yeah.
some of his best shit in the 90s.
I know, and 2000s. It's crazy. So, I mean, in conclusion, I would say check out these 10 songs. Well, I guess it's 9 songs, so we had one overlap. Check out those 9 songs.
Yeah.
Check out the documentary called Running Down a Dream. It's on Netflix right now. It's unbelievable. It's just, I mean, if you're not even a Petty fan yet, it's just a great music documentary. Great music documentary. So, yeah, check that out and just start tapping into his catalog if you haven't really done it before. I mean, if you appreciate good songwriting, you will more than appreciate Tom Petty.
And to Tom Petty, I'll go out saying I love you and I loved your music, and it's going to be part of the soundtrack of my life for as long
Agreed.
as I live.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and I would say to Tom Petty, thank you for sharing your heart with every person on this planet who listened to your music, and it's made me a better musician and a better writer because of it.
For sure. And we'll send you out with our favorite Tom Petty song, Walls. And I guess we'll say peace.
Adios.
fly. Sundowns are golden, then fade away. And if I never do nothing, I'll get you back someday. 'Cause you got a heart so big it could crush this town, and I can't hold out forever. Even walls fall down, and all around your island there's a barricade. It keeps out the danger, it holds in the pain. And sometimes you're happy, sometimes you cry. Half of me is ocean, half of me is sky. But you got a heart so big it could crush this town, and I can't hold out forever. Even walls fall down. Yes, they do. Some things are over, some things go on, and part of me you carry, part of me is gone. But you got a heart so big it could crush this